Amen. Thank you, Faith, and thank you, band, for leading us in music. Whoa, Rick. Sort of interesting. I heard on the news the other day, and I always wonder where people get statistics and how it all works out. You know, they poll 1,000 people and say this is what it is across America. But anyway, the poll was for mothers, and what do mothers think about Mother's Day? Basically, are they disappointed or are they really happy? Do you know that 40% of you ladies are disappointed on Mother's Day? No? What would 40% of you say you're disappointed? That's good, because then you're better than the national poll that they say. What they said was that 40% of women would just as soon go out and buy their own presents. They want to do their own time. They're disappointed because their kids forget to call them or make them a present, or all these different reasons. And as I listened to that, I thought, sounds interesting. I just wondered here if we took sort of poll, but no? Okay, so you guys don't match the national average, which is good. I'm glad to hear. Well, it's interesting if I'd ask you the question, and what do you think about your mom, or when you, if you're a kid right now, a high school, middle school kid, or if you still live at home as a college kid, or, you know, for us that are older with our parents, what are some words that come to you in your mind for your mom? And I asked it Wednesday night to the sermon study group, and some of the words were a mentor, an example, one who is patient, one who sacrifices a lot, consistent, I like that one, consistent, stable, a teacher, a lover, one who loves, the cheerleader, one who has tough love, unconditional love, but also boundaries. I like that too. And I wonder, what would you, in your own mind, and I won't ask you to speak up right now, but, you know, when you think about moms or your mom, what are some of those characteristics that you see in a mom or your mom? Or again, as during my prayer time, I talked about there's some of us, some of you maybe were raised with a mom that was hard, that you would really not have any of these characteristics that you would talk about your mom with. And then the question is, when you think about that, for the ladies in your life, what type of characteristics did they have? Well, it's interesting as we read through Scripture, and especially with now doing this whole read through the Bible in 2 years, I'm amazed. We're almost a quarter of the way through. We've been doing this now for 5 months, reading through the Bible. The passage this week has to deal with the mom of James and John, the wife of Zebedee. Well, this is a passage that when we read it at first, it sounds like this mom is being very overambitious. Oh man, my mind just went to that TV show. The TV show that's on now, something about in the 80s. And my mind just... The Goldbergs. Yeah, the Goldbergs. Any of you ever watched that TV show, The Goldbergs? Nobody? Okay, 2 of us do. That's it. 2 of us, yeah. All right, you watch it too? Yeah. That the mom on the Goldbergs TV show, she's overbearing. Her 3 kids do nothing wrong, and they can be atrocious kids, but according to her eyes, they do nothing wrong, and she's very overbearing. Well, if we look at this passage, we may see that same thing. Matthew 20 to 23. It says to us, "Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, James and John. Kneeling down, she asked a favor of Jesus." Jesus says, "What do you want as you're kneeling down before me?" She said, "Grant that one of these 2 sons of mine may sit, one at your right," some translations say some at your right hand, "and the other at your left," or some say in your left hand, "in your kingdom." Isn't that a pretty bold request? I mean, think about it. That's a pretty ambitious request for a mom to say to Jesus, okay, Jesus, I believe you are the Messiah. I believe you are the one to come. I believe you are the one that is in the line of David, the one that's going to be setting up this new earthly kingdom for we Jewish people. And because of that, I want my two sons, one to be on your right, one to be on your left. The two positions of power. We read that and we think she's being overbearing, but we also, maybe there's something else that's going on down here. Some things that we can glean out of her request, and the way that she was as a mother, and not just look at this one passage, but some other passages about her. But this passage goes on and says, Jesus says, you don't know what you are asking. And then Jesus says to James and John, can you drink the cup I'm going to drink? And they both say, we can. It's interesting because if you go to Mark for the same story in the Gospel of Mark, it's not the mother who comes to Jesus, but it's James and John who comes to Jesus. So there's a little difference within the translation or within what's going on in this point within the story. Again, if we see the same accident, we're going to see it from different perspectives. Okay, we're going to see and we're going to have a different story about that accident and of what took place. I do believe it was their mother who did ask the question of Jesus. And he says, indeed, you will drink from my cup. But to sit at my right or my left is not for me to grant. Those places belong to those who have been prepared for by my Father. I think the first thing we need to ask this morning is, who is this lady? Mother of James and John. Well, we can take a look at the cross, at the foot of the cross. We know within the Gospels who were the ones who went to the cross to witness, to give testimony, to testify that Christ actually died on the cross. Well, we read in the first passage, Matthew 27, those that were at the cross, among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. So this lady, James and John's mom, is also at the cross. Well, read from John 19. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother, Mary, his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. It's interesting because then this next one says, some women were watching from a distance. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the younger, and of Joseph, and Salome. What theologians have done, and when you look at these passages, you have the mother of James and John, who is Mary's sister, who probably is Salome. In other words, I'm not going to stake $1 million on this, but I would stake a couple $100 on this, that the mother is Salome, is Mary's sister, which would make her Jesus's aunt. Isn't that pretty cool? When you actually start putting the dots together, John the Baptist, remember John the Baptist? You put the dots together with him. He is a cousin to Jesus. So here we probably have the aunt to Jesus who comes and says, hey, I would like this for my sons. There's a relationship there as aunt to nephew. Well, what we see here is maybe not necessarily an ambition that we would say is really an over-ambitious mom, but I think there's some things that we can glean out of here. Some things that we can say, these are some aspects within Salome's life, the mom of James and John, that we too, for you as women, that you can take hold of and say, as a lady, as a mom, these are some things I can do. But it doesn't mean you guys can turn off the radio station or change the station in your brain to something else, because these are also for us men to learn from. First idea here is the fact that Salome approaches Jesus. She brings her sons with her to Jesus. She doesn't come by herself, but she brings her kids with her. I know that I've bothered a lot of people at times when I've said this before, and I might bother some of you right now when I say this before. But I can't tell you how often I've heard from people, well, we can't make it to church, we can't make it to Sunday school, we can't make it to this or that because we're just like, our husband is gone or the wife is gone. And I used to say, when I was the single dad with, a lot of you know, I had the 3 kids in the parsonage, I would just simply say, huh. Follow me? Mine come. Well, you're the pastor, you have to make them come. Yeah, but even if I wasn't the pastor, in my heart I knew that it was the right thing to do. And I can't tell you how many people have been frustrated with me over all these years, because they say, well, who are you? You think you're better? No, I don't. I just believe that it's our responsibility as parents, as grandparents. No, we want to give our kids all these options, don't we? We say, oh, we want to give our kids all these options, but how many of us give our kids an option if they're going to go to 5th grade or not? Do any of you tell your kids when they're in 5th grade, if you want to stay home from school, you can stay home all year long? We don't do that, do we? No, we say, kids, get up. You're going to school. I think the first aspect here that we can see for Salome, the mother of James and John, is the call that she has within our lives, that she shows us here, is she brings her children to Jesus. Now, sometimes people think that the disciples were all older, in their 30s, 40s, when they were called. We really don't know. There's arguments about that. Some say they were teenagers when Christ called them. We're not for sure of their age, what they were, but whatever their age they were, their mom brought them. It's also interesting, if we would look in Mark chapter 1. If you have your Bibles, you can flip to it if you want, but Mark chapter 1, verses 19 and 20, when Jesus is calling his first disciples by the Sea of Galilee, he goes out and he sees Peter and Andrew, and they're off fishing, and he says to them, follow me. Peter and Andrew leave their boat, their nets, and they follow. Then Jesus goes on and he sees James and John, and he says to James and John, follow me. And if you read Mark, it says that James and John's dad, Zebedee, is there at the boat. But we don't read that Zebedee says, hey, sons, no, you stay here. Hey, sons, we got business. We got to work today. You know, we got an early morning tomorrow morning. We got to get on this boat. We got to be making the finances for the house and the family. Son, you can't be following this. You can't, even if he's your cousin, you can't be following this guy who says he's the Messiah. You have work to do. But what does Zebedee do? Steps back and lets his sons go. In some respects, he also brings the sons to Jesus. He says, you know what? I see who Christ is. You need to follow. So the first idea here for just to think about within Salome's life as being a mom and the aunt to Jesus is that she approaches Jesus. Secondly is her attitude. The New International Version that we read said, bow down. Some say kneel. Some say worship. King James says that she came and she worshiped Jesus. The Hebrew word, part of the Hebrew word here for worship is to kiss one's hand, like you would go to see a king, and the king would put his hand out with the ring, and you'd kiss the ring. It's showing that humility. It's showing that reverence. It's showing that attitude. It's showing the respect for the person that you're going to see. Salome here is saying that she understands the power and in some respects who Jesus is. She doesn't understand it fully yet because she's thinking there's going to be an earthly kingdom. But all the disciples thought there was still going to be an earthly kingdom at that point, it's believed. But she comes with an attitude of respect. And she asks the bold question. You know, there's the phrase that says the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I always find it amazing to watch families, and even within my own family, how I have picked up some of those attitudes, actions, and behaviors from my mom and dad. Some are good. Sorry, Mom. Some are not so good. Again, you all know she watches it in the evening, Sunday night. So some are good, some are not so good. It's interesting to watch other families and to watch other kids. And when I know the parents, and then I get to know, and having been here for 16 years, I mean, there's so many families I get to do weddings for. Yesterday was just a wedding for Jerry DeBoer, Robin and Jerry's oldest son. And so as we're sitting in the office and I'm doing the counseling, I always chuckle because I know the mom and dad, I know their behaviors, and I see behaviors in the kids and how they match up. Y'all follow me on that? Y'all see that, don't you? Yep, within people's lives. And it can be that good aspect, but I've also seen the bad aspect. You know, where mom might really have a really piss poor attitude about things, and it gets passed on to the kids. Mom might or dad might really have the attitude of racism, and it gets passed on to the kids. Mom or dad might really have that attitude. You with me on that? And you look at the parents, and you can often, not always, because sometimes the apple doesn't fall far from the tree unless it's intentionally moved. You move it intentionally, you see what's going on. But typically, we are our parents. We become who our mom was. We become who our dad was. Salome here is coming to Jesus, bowing down, kneeling, worshiping in reverence, respect, in awe. And that attitude that she's bringing to Jesus is also an attitude then that is passed on to James and to John. Moms, the attitudes that you have towards others are the attitudes your kids are going to pick up. You know, if it's the attitude, oh man, it's Sunday morning, we got to go to church. Okay, kids, come on, let's go, we got to go. Or is it, hey man, it's Sunday morning, we get to go to church. Oh man, do you believe what the pastor had to say? Man, you know, sort of that, instead of roast beef, the roast pastor at lunchtime. Or is it like, wow, that was sort of interesting what was talked about? Is it the attitude of, oh man, our neighbors are so rah, 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 and do you believe they're doing that? Do you believe they cut their lawn this way? Or is it the, you with me on that? It's the attitude that we take gets passed on to our kids. So, Salome, I believe the answer Jesus, approaches Jesus with her kids. She has an attitude of reverence and respect, of worship. She also, there is an appeal that Jesus has. Jesus has a draw on us. It's like a magnet that wants to pull us to him. And when Mary, or when Salome asked the question about Jesus, Jesus says, well, what do you want? You know, what is there? There's an appeal that Christ has within our lives. There's that phrase that says, there's no atheists in foxholes. And I know that atheism is growing within America. But I also know, especially with being at the base, because since I work with so many more people out there, over 850 or so people, but I also know that when the stuff hits the fan, where do they look? To God. When the stuff hits the fan, all of a sudden it's like, come on, God, what's going on? There's an appeal that Christ has within our lives. And Salome understood this, and that appeal is what drew her to Jesus Christ. Christ is concerned with our wants and our needs. More with our needs than our wants. But he says to Salome, okay, what do you want? What do you want your sons to have? Well, when she asks, he says, can they drink of the cup? Well, I think most of us know that when James and John say yes, James and John did not realize what cup they were going to be drinking of. James became one of the first martyrs, along with, who was the other first martyr? Stephen. Yep, Stephen, who was a deacon. So we had the story of Stephen, who became a deacon. And then there's also James, the first two martyrs. John is the only disciple to die of natural causes. Up in the 90s AD, he was exiled on the island of Patmos. That's where he wrote the New Testament book of Revelation. Well, it's interesting. I did ask this question Wednesday night at the sermon study group. I just said, you know, which one of these two, James or John, maybe had a fuller cup of pain they had to drink? I mean, originally we might all say, well, James, he was martyred. James was with the Lord a lot faster. John lived his entire life. John heard about the other disciples being martyred. John saw things himself. John was imprisoned himself. The cup that John drank was a very severe, hard cup of following Jesus Christ. But there was still that appeal that Christ had to John, the appeal that Christ had to Salome to approach and to have the attitude of worship and praise. We also see the fact that Salome was honest with her request to Jesus. Now, sometimes we don't think we can be honest in our prayers. Who can we be more honest with than God? Jesus Christ. God, this is what I need in my life. God, this is what I'm looking at. God, this is how I need you to bless me. God, this is... And of course, God's going to say, and within the Lord's Prayer, we say, Lord, not my will, but thy will be done. Our Father who art in heaven, thy will be done. But within that, we can still ask for the things that we desire within our lives. Salome also had an awareness of who Jesus was. She became quiet before the Lord. It's interesting, after the death and burial, and 3 days later, Salome is one of the ones who is listed in the Gospel of Mark, who's going to go and bring spices to the body so they can anoint Jesus. Another portion of the Gospels talks about the fact that Salome was one of the women who supported Jesus' ministry, who gave us support there. There was an awareness that Salome had of who Jesus Christ was, and an awareness of the desiring to worship and walk with Jesus Christ. And even though she gave Christ the bold request, she gave him the bold request because she had an awareness of who Christ was. So, I ask you, do we give our bold request to Jesus with an awareness of knowing who he is? I know at times I do. There's things in my life, there's things in my family lives that it's like, Lord, I'm asking for this for my family. I'm asking for this for the kids. I'm asking for this for the larger family. I'm asking for this for the church. And it's a bold request. Yes, it is. But it's a bold request with the awareness of knowing who Jesus Christ is, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the one who can fulfill those needs, those desires, the one who can bring that healing within our lives, the one who can bring us back into a restored relationship, or family members into a restored relationship with him. So Salome approaches Jesus, has an attitude to Jesus of worship and praise. There's the appeal that Christ has to her. There's the awareness within her life of who Jesus was. There's also an acceptance of Jesus. The greatest gift. I truly believe the greatest gift that a mother and or father can leave their children is the gift of faith. Rick? It's the greatest gift. We can leave, we can acquire millions of dollars and pass that on to the kids, but what is that going to do? We can acquire property and pass it on to the kids, but what is that going to do? We can go off and have all fun times with the kids and just enjoy life, and just, what is that eternally going to do? The greatest gift that we can give to our children, the greatest gift that we can give to our grandchildren, is the gift of faith. That gets me back to the first point that I had when I said that there's been people that have been upset with me over the years when they say they can't show up, and I challenge them, hopefully in a loving way. Yes, you can. What is it? It's priorities. What is your priority? Really? What is my priority? The greatest gift is for we as parents, for mothers to give, is the gift of faith. Salome took her kids to Christ. Zebedee allowed them to go to Jesus Christ. No barriers. Salome prayed that her kids would be part of the kingdom. I like this part. She prayed that they would be part of the kingdom. Just this morning in my office, the couple that showed up for the prayer time, and anybody that wants to come at 9:30, we do prayer time in my office. They said to me, you know, Pastor, we used to get frustrated 10, 12 years ago with you. We just didn't quite understand why you were praying for your kids and for a spouse who was a Christian for your kids. But now we understand, because now our kids have gotten older, one's gotten married, now grandkids, and now we're praying for our grandkids to have a Christian spouse 20 years from now. We need to be daily in prayer for our kids to be part of the kingdom. It used to be on the 50s, 60s, 70s, a little bit of the 80s, statistically, that kids that were raised within the church would sort of go off to college and sort of do their college thing, and the majority would filter back into church. That ain't happening anymore. Think about all the kids, for a lot of us, that have gone through the elementary, the Camp Calvary, the Sunday school, the high school youth group program. A lot of them are now past that age of getting out of college, and they're still not that they have to come here, but that I know for a lot of them that they haven't gone anyplace. What is our need as parents and grandparents? We need to be in prayer on our knees, praying that our children will be part of the kingdom and that their future spouses will be part of the kingdom. But not just part of the kingdom, but to be actively involved in the kingdom. Because it's one thing to show up once in a while and say, yep, you're part of the kingdom. There's another thing to actually say, you know, Lord, I want to be actively involved in your kingdom. I want to sit at your right and your left. I want to be the one that is used by you. Lord, I want you to teach me to be a fisherman. I want to be served. I want my life to be in service of you, O Lord. And what are we as parents called to be doing? Modeling that, mentoring that, but also praying that our kids are part of the kingdom, but also praying that they will be actively involved in the kingdom. A lot of that comes from our attitude that we have with each other and our attitude towards God. One of the greatest things that we do, and I know that we've said this many times, is when people come up and they become a member of the church, they do confession of their faith, or when we do baptism. A couple weeks ago, we had infant baptism for a few infants in church. Yesterday, we had immersion. As a Reformed church, we typically do church, with the sprinkling. I do a whole lot of water to represent, but I've done about 20, 25 immersions within the ministry that God's called me to. And Tamara Mumford, down there on the left corner, she's one of the ladies that works in the nursery. Thank you. In the nursery and involved in church and Calvary Kids. With her kids, 3 of the kids came to meet with the elders a month ago, and the kids, they offered their faith, their journey. Peyton, Cadence, and Tammy, you're listening to me right now, aren't you? I just sort of lost your last Hayden, the son, and we did baptism yesterday. Tamara came to the elders and said, I've accepted Christ in my life, and my kids have also accepted Christ in their life, and we want to be part of the body. And they took a vow. And those that were there, just like Sunday morning, 2 weeks ago with baptism, 3 weeks ago, you all took a vow that we would be involved in the raising of the children of this community. So what are we supposed to be involved in? Can you, Maddie, just back up a slide? Just not moms and dads that are called to do this. We are all called. Take all the kids to Christ. Now, it's pretty sad when I have to beg people to do Camp Calvary or be involved in Bible school or any other aspect like that within the church, because we're a large enough church to have everybody signing up for different things to be involved with the kids. We got to all be in prayer for the kids of our congregation, of our families, those that we know to be part of the kingdom. But we also need to be in prayer they will be active in the kingdom of God. That they will truly give their life over. Because there is no greater gift that a mother can give to her children than the gift of faith. Because it has eternal ramifications. In the name of the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, Lord, this morning as we have looked at just 3 passages from the book of Matthew, Lord,